Back in Brussels. I was in Berlin recently, and a few days ago I came back on the train, and on the train I was producing music on my AirPods, just my little Bluetooth AirPods, and I was making some groovy house music, and I was trying to get it as far as I could just on the AirPods, and honestly, this is the result. That's just the groove, added some other elements like... And honestly, that's not a bad result. I'm getting good musical playfulness, and there's a few ways that I reassured myself on the train that I wasn't getting too far out of whack. One of the things I didn't do is I didn't reference with other tracks. That would be something I would do often. But some things that I do when I'm in a situation like that might be, I might go have a look at the Pro L or like the end limiter, and I will go look that I'm basically hitting the limiter a couple of decibels, certainly not more than 5. And that the end result is somewhere, minus 10 lufs is pretty good, minus 9 lufs is also pretty good. As long as it's not like slamming hyper compressed techno, I would say aiming for like minus 10 lufs is comfortable for my home production. And then, this is a break of course. There we go. So we're kind of hitting a healthy loudness, without pushing the limiter too far. And then the other main check I would do is I would look at the tonal balance and see that the tonal balance isn't, especially in the bass, super out of whack. I tend to produce too dark, so I tend to produce with too much of a bump up here. And so this is pretty comfortable, to be honest. It's mostly focused around the low end and around the high end, not that much in the mids, because I just want this to be a functional groove tool. I actually don't want the mids to take up too much attention. But then I arrived in my home studio and I put it on and I'm like, it feels maybe a little bit flat. Here, let me play a reference track. This is a track by Levon Vincent. I can't play too much of that track or I'm going to get demonetized. There's a few things about the mixdown of this track that I like. And I think one of the main ideas compared to my track is that there are fewer elements carrying the groove and there's more space between elements. So it feels sparser in a way, but also like a heavier, chunkier groove. And mine kind of feels a little bit rushed in that regard. It feels a little bit breathless, like it's trying too hard. So I think I might need to strip away some of the elements of my track or sidechain them a bit more or make them all have a bit more of a bouncy contour so that the track feels more relaxed. I know some of you come to a mixing tutorial and you just want to hear like, we need 3 decibels of cut at 200 hertz. And it's like, it's not that simple. Usually, I think in a good mixdown, we're talking with emotional terms like this. And then, of course, the technical tools support that emotional story. But essentially, like, this mixdown kind of works. There's just some emotional qualities to it that I think I would prefer to emphasize differently using mix tools. Does that make sense? So in this video, I just want you to follow along with the thought process of taking this mix from like the 80% to maybe the 90% mark, okay? And now let's talk about the mixing space that I'm in. In this case, I'm in a very big room that's asymmetrical, so it's not got very strong room modes, and it doesn't have a lot of problems in the low end like every other room I've been in the past. I've got my 2 Adam S3V monitors at a healthy distance away from me, and I have these kind of chunky porous absorbers standing up against the walls on the first reflection points. So this room is slowly but surely becoming a pretty good room to mix in. It's not a professional mix and master studio by any stretch of the imagination, but it is pretty good at this point, I think. This weekend, even more acoustic treatment is going to come in, and so it's going to be even more controlled. Another tool that I'm going to use today for visual and analytical listening is this plugin called Inspect by DSP Dealer, a very nice group of engineers and artists in Berlin. So when I hit play, you can see everything come up here analytically. And there's a lot that we can talk about and think about just from looking at these meters. But remember that these meters are only thinking tools, right? It's the experience of the sound coming through the speakers that is our primary source of knowledge and the thing that's going to move us emotionally. We have to stay emotionally available to think about the music as it arrives with us. And sometimes these numbers can help point things out to us that we might be missing, or they might give us a certain target. But we're not going to worry too much about these numbers. And the beauty of this plugin, by the way, is that it works at the level of your operating system. So if I play the reference track in VLC Player, it analyzes it just as well as if I play in Ableton here. Very convenient, because then I can compare the two. And so for good subjective listening, I would say I probably want everything that I'm playing to peak around the same level, and then to pay attention to the RMS. So that's this big meter here in the middle, which is the peaking volume and the RMS volume. And then over here is the LUFS. So the LUFS, let's look at the short-term LUFS. It's about -11, -12 on my track. And on the reference track, it's quieter. It's also peaking at -1, so that's a good reference. And then it's around -12 LUFS, which is quieter or more dynamic than mine. Also, the RMS is slightly quieter and more dynamic. So that's good news. That means that my track is a little bit overcompressed. And that's great, because being able to back off that mastering limiter will give everything more chance to breathe. It'll give me more space to highlight the things that I want to highlight. That's really nice. So let's make a mental note of the loudness that I want to achieve. Now you can see that there's two different colors here on our LUFS meter. And all that means is that there's been arbitrarily this target set of -14 LUFS. You might have heard that as like the Spotify target. There are various reasons you might or might not want to take -14 as your target. And in fact, because we're here trying to sort of orient ourselves toward Levon Vincent, why don't we just settings here and set the target to -12.5. So that's our dynamics with regards to loudness. And then in terms of frequencies, we have to maybe have a look to see if there's anything that catches our attention. So here's an FFT analyzer. And as you can see, it kind of tries to catch the peaks here. And so there's a big kick peak at about 51, 52, I don't know what. And then, yeah, it just kind of bounces up here in the mids. And then there's like a little bit of a hi-hat here. You don't really need to pay attention to that. We just need to look at it and get a sense of what it looks like, to notice that if ours is significantly different, maybe that gives us some information. Also down here, you get 3 waveforms as we're split into different bands, so our low frequencies, mids, and highs. One thing that we see, for example, is that the kick is chugging along and there's like some bass element playing with it. Yeah, I mean, this all looks very normal. If we see that something in our composition looks specifically spiky or there's big empty spaces, again, that might be a signal that we want to pay attention to, but yeah, it's just for fun. Oh, also notice that the spectrogram shows some stereo information. So it's nice to know that everything is very close to being perfectly correlated. So everything is near 1. So that means left and right are very similar. So the sound sounds coherent. It's coming from the front. But there are enough elements that kind of pull it into stereo that gives us some stereo interest, probably the high frequencies, you know? Okay, let's move to our composition and see what we can do with this information. What are we noticing? So our loudness, peaking around -1. Our RMS is a touch high. We could definitely lose a decibel on that. And then our LUFS, we can lose one decibel on LUFS as well. So it's as easy as, for example, this. We've hit 1, we've hit -12, and we're at still a little high here actually. Okay, let's go down even more. Okay, so now that our loudness is very similar to our reference track, I can ask myself, what do I really think of various elements? Like, for example, the kick has this kind of, has a little bit too many frequencies somewhere. I'm gonna find that somewhere. And I do that with an EQ, and I sweep around until I decide which part of it I want less of. So it could be there. It might be there actually. Let's listen with the hi-hats. And I just want to push the kick back. Okay, so if I cut a little bit these punchy and clicky parts, maybe I can increase the volume a little bit. that makes me want to turn it up. And often if I want to turn the sound up, that's a good sign. I often have this feeling of like, you want to turn up the volume to hear your music, and often there's something slapping you in the ear in a way that's unpleasant, and that's the thing in the mix that you might want to take control of. Anything that kind of feels in the way, I can reduce. Like here. Okay, I went into the sound design of the kick and I tweaked a little bit so that I could really hear the sub frequencies talking nicely to each other. And this was a sound that's layered on top of it. Maybe I just want less of that. It's still there, but now the low frequencies feel more dancey. Feel way more groovy. And this is one of those things that I think for years I struggled with because, how should I say, simply as an amateur producer, you simply cannot hear a lot of the nuances of the low end due to your various listening conditions. And, you could get good monitors, you could get good headphones, and there are ways of hearing these things, but it's very hard to make good educated decisions about things in the low end if you simply can't really hear the nuances of what you're doing down there. And on a big, nice sound system with clarity, it becomes so obvious what sounds good and what doesn't. This is beautiful. Here we go with the hi-hats. Okay. I'm gonna mix these hi-hats in bit by bit. I only want the fresh frequencies of this one. Do it a little bit less. This just sits on top. That's real nice. I feel like there's a lot more space between elements now, mostly from just subtracting a few things that were stepping on each other's toes. I sometimes like to think of this metaphor of like you're walking into a room, and I would love to be able to look at all the different elements and still have a sense that there's some space in between. So I'm not getting buffeted by the elements. I'm kind of standing in the middle of them, appreciating them. And so they all have a certain amount of separation and that they respect each other enough, if that makes sense. It's a bit abstract. Oh, this is nice. The low end is nice and round and warm, but it's not too subby. Awesome. Let's bring in some of the other musical elements. Oh, wow. Beautiful. This thing has space now to really do its thing. Beautiful. And this melody to be decided. Let's first listen to this effect. Oh. Bit too loud. Cool. Notice that we're kind of hitting our targets with barely touching the limiter at all. Not every single kick drum is hitting the limiter now. And so I can push it a tiny bit. So we're hitting the limiter a tiny bit. And now we're doing good numbers here. This sounds really nice to me here. And so let's compare this to our original. So I'll bring in the original and I'll set the output to external out. That way it doesn't go through the master channel, so it doesn't go through that limiter that's at the end of chain. So this is before. And this is after. Before. And after. And you might say, well, that's not such a huge difference. Yeah, I would say that the main difference is in the balance of the kick and what that does to the overall mix. I feel like the kick has now become deeper, smoother, sexier in a way, a little bit like more pleasant and round. And so that means to me that everything feels more relaxed. I've also cut away some of the low frequencies of some of those, like the high groovy hi-hat elements. So there's a little bit more space and clarity in the mids, but that's quite subtle. Mainly the position of the kick really changes how this mix vibes now. Let's listen again. Notice the kick. So round kick, kind of nasal kick. That's a huge improvement in my book. Now I do think that there are some hi-hat elements that are a little bit fatiguing. Mostly this one, I think. So let me keep tweaking that until I'm happy. One of the things that this hi-hat was doing was it was hitting you in the ear around 5 kilohertz. And 5 kilohertz is a frequency that tends to be very fatiguing, like especially 3 to 5 kilohertz. If you have too much of that, everything will sound very sibilant and very kind of harsh in the ear because our ears are very sensitive at those frequencies. So you want to be mindful of which elements are very prominent in those frequencies. And if something sounds a bit harsh, that might be a good place to look. For example, with a lot of those frequencies, with less of those frequencies. Let's listen to our overall mix at those frequencies. Does this sound nice? It does, doesn't it? I feel like the sound design of the synth could use some love, but I'm going to do that in the next video. Solid. If we feel like this whole group can get a bit too sibilant sometimes, we might just put an equalizer on the whole group and find some of the places where it gets the most fatiguing. I think here around 6,000 can be a bit much sometimes. So maybe let's do a little dynamic EQ. Could just be a regular EQ too, but we like to do a dynamic EQ because it's fancy. Sometimes you just need to turn things down. Nice. If we take just our groove and we look at the stereo spectrum here, the goniometer, we see that it's very central, right? So one thing that we could do is go onto our highs, put something like mid-side matrix on there, and just boost the sides a bit. It's a bit wider. That's quite nice. How about this element as well? Maybe that could do with a little bit of widening. Yeah, a little bit of boost in the sides. All good. My old mix feels a bit more squeezed in terms of the stereo. This one feels a little bit more effortlessly wide. Feels a bit deeper, feels a bit fresher without being sibilant. Yeah, I think this is definitely a bunch of good steps in the right direction. For 4, after. How do we feel about our low end groove? Totally okay. Do I want to reduce this even more? Yeah. Shorten the decay of this tops element. Make the kick even smoother. I like that. Oh, I almost forgot there's a clap in this. Crazy. That clap deserves to be a bit bigger. When making decisions about a clap like this, maybe use the metaphor of like the mixing box, right? You've got your high to low frequencies, you've got your near to far, you've got your left to right, and every element lives inside of this three-dimensional space. And so already the box is quite full of elements, right? And so this clap has to live somewhere. And whatever space it carves out for itself, it's kind of taking away from other elements. And that could be fine if you say, okay, right now I really want this clap to just dominate the mix. That's a totally valid choice. But if you say, oh, I want this clap to just change the way the groove moves a little bit without actually being very perceptible, just the way that it might affect your dancing a little bit, that's also valid. So what do we want? This is a little bit of a medium approach. We could go really snap, in which case maybe you even want to add a little bit of reverb, or you want to like have some stereo width to make it even bigger inside of the box, right? Or we can push it back even further than this. In this way, it'll just change the way that you dance to the mix because it'll emphasize that backbeat more. But it won't really read as like, oh my God, the clap has just come in, you know? I think I like I think I do like the big clap. For something that's housey like this, yeah, why not? Small moves, but those are the kind of moves that make a mix better over time. It's a lot of moving parts, as you can see, but I think that one of the main takeaways for me, it's totally valid and possible to compose your song on a situation where the mixdown can never become very, very good. For example, just laptop speakers or earbuds or whatever. The core artistic proposition of the song is always going to be the musical elements that you create. So the musical story, what is the vibe? What's the energy? What's the feeling? You know, you can make those elements and you can create that music even if you know that the mixdown is still a little off. And then forgive yourself that, yeah, it does sound a little bit naff when you compare it to a professional track, but the distance from your draft mix to the good mix is probably not so far away. You just need to find a person or a situation where a few good decisions can be made to polish the track to a professional level, and then you can get there. But yeah, I understand that the distance can be quite disheartening, but you just need a place where you can really hear what you're doing and enough experience there so that you can actually make the right moves to get you where you want to go. In an age where it seems to be all about like AIs can do everything instead of humans and you never need to talk to another human again, I'm going to give you the opposite advice. Go talk to people in the city where you live. I'm 100% sure that in pretty much every city in the world, there's some crazy person who set up a nice listening environment and is experienced in mixing music there. And collaborate with them and together bring your vision into the world. Music is supposed to be connective tissue that brings us all together, not something that you have to be able to do purely on your own and then upload to streaming services without ever seeing another human being. In a perfect world, this thing is fostering some kind of connection. So try to find yourself a mixing engineer in your neighborhood and see if they can help you. Make a budget for it, and talking to them, you will learn to hear how they hear, and then over time, you're going to get better at your own mixes as well. If you want to learn from myself in a more structured context, I do have video courses that could help you out. Make sure to like the video and subscribe, and leave me a comment to say something nice for the algorithm. And until next time, stay producing, be good to each other, and take care. Bye-bye.